everyone. Welcome to the 405th episode of the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and your co-host,
Kevin Toffel.
And we have quite the show for you. We are back from CES, so we're going to be talking about, first up, like the coolest story I've read in a really long time that also articulates a lot of the issues associated with building connected devices. So we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to be talking about how we felt leaving CES and how it was kind of a bummer. And then we're going to talk about more CES stuff that we saw, including some updates about Matter, Leviton, Cool Sensor, Shelly's new stuff. And then leaving the CES world entirely, we're going to go to the fields and discuss John Deere's new deal with farmers. Then, talking about one of the big trends that I see happening in 2023, which is wireless power. It's also going to be our guest feature, but we're going to be talking about a new partnership with Energis, new equipment from ASIA, and an actually wireless powered device that is almost here. Wow. And our guest this week is going to be Sanjay Gupta, who is president of the Air Fuel Alliance, which just announced at CES a new wireless power standard. So we'll talk about what that is, what they're trying to power, and how that will affect the IoT. So, exciting show. First, let's hear from one of our sponsors. This week's sponsor is Silicon Labs. Silicon Labs is a leader in secure, intelligent wireless technology for a more connected world. Their integrated hardware and software platform, intuitive development tools, and robust support make them an ideal long-term partner in building advanced industrial, commercial, home, and life applications. Silicon Labs makes it easy for developers to solve complex wireless challenges throughout the product lifecycle and get to market quickly with innovative solutions that transform industries, grow economies, and improve lives. Learn more at scilabs.com. Okay, Kevin, let's talk about this. I'm just going to go with awesome. It is excellent. I love this story so much. This is a story from a gentleman named Kevin Chung, and it's on his own blog. We'll link to it. It's called Taking Over a Dead IoT Company. And in it, he basically was curious to find out what happened to a company that was created back in 2017 called NYC Train Sign. And what it was a wooden replica of the train signs that tell you when your train is coming in the New York subway station. You also see them other places. California.
I don't know what they look like outside of New York City for the transit authorities, but in New York City, they're very easily discernible. I don't see them anywhere else.
Caltrain has them.
Are they similar? Are they color? And
I think they're color. Maybe they're not.
Yeah, they're made up of very small LEDs, almost like light bright lights.
Yeah, they are.
For those who are old enough to remember light bright, I don't even know if that's still around, but it's kind of like a modern light bright sign that's smart. And they were selling these, as you said, in 2017. We'll talk about the price they were selling it at a little bit later, I have a feeling, because that might be part of the reason the company went out of business and went under. But when the author, Kevin Chung, says he is, quote unquote, taking over a dead IoT company, that's exactly what he did, because he got one of these signs in 2021. He wrote an exploit and got control of the company's website. He has all the code for the product to actually work.
He actually created his own server. He stood up his own server to host the API, so you could pull from that server to get the train data.
Yeah.
So this is why we're talking about this, because this post, which is really long but worth reading and full of delightful photos and memes, he starts by, once he gets this, he's like, oh, hey, let's see what's inside. And he realizes inside that it is both poorly made, like the electronics are poorly screwed in and soldered together. But he also realized that this is something, the BOM on this, the bill of materials, is about $150. And that is a very high BOM. And when we talk about, his general rule was like, hey, multiply your BOM cost by 4. And so that's what you should be selling something at.
At retail, wholesale prices would be cheaper because of their markup, middleman, et cetera. But I get it. That makes sense. He's saying this should be costing $600.
Roughly. His rule is accurate. Like when we talk to companies about their BOMs and their end prices, that's very much in line. Sometimes it's as little as 3x. But anyway, so what he noticed, though, was some of the stuff here was like they used a Pi with a hat, and they probably should have done their own dedicated board. But, when you're just mocking something up, and actually 2017 feels a little late for this, but, even as early as 2013, 2014, we saw a lot of these kind of like hacked together projects. And they launched on Kickstarter, and then if you were successful, you actually did that integration work that brought the prices down. But his conversation about why they may have used these materials, what that meant for their costs, is really applicable to how it is to build an IoT hardware device. So you've got to get people to give you money up front before building hardware, because you have to buy all this stuff up front. So it does mean that you've got to do something like a Kickstarter or have venture funding or something like that. And then he talks about how hard it was you're not done once you have the hardware that does what you want it to do. You've got to have code on the back end and a server somewhere to host the API from the train. You got to get that.
You may have to pay for the API.
Yeah. You've got to pay for your server costs and your hosting costs. He does a deep dive on like the quality of the code, the quality of the build, just how he registered the domain, where he got the APIs from.
Once you have control of a website domain, I mean, you could use any domain, but once you have control of, or he got control of NYC, what's it called? Train signs? And NYC train signs?
Yes.
He could then just create folders on the server /API and then build his own APIs, and they would be and look official. Again, not necessary. You could do that on any server, but to get the things working again as they should for any that are out in the wild, makes sense.
Exactly. So he shows a video, and he also put his code and is hosting the server as long as his costs don't go too high. So if you have an old NYC train sign, you actually can go here and
get your sign working
Get your sign working again. And this is another point I want to make. A lot of people are like, oh my gosh, this company's shutting down. If only they would open source the code. And by this company, I mean an IoT company. And this shows, again, you can't just throw up open source code and expect it to work. You've got to have a server that it's going to run on. You've got to point everybody to that server. I mean, it's a lot of work is the bottom line here.
Yeah. It is a great post. I actually thought it was funny at first. I kind of glossed over the more important points only because this is a project that anybody with just a little bit of DIY skills and some coding skills could put together. I mean, it's literally just a Pi, an LED matrix, a hat for connectivity, power supply. That's it. And a wood box. I mean, that's it.
Yeah. He originally did this because he was interested in building his own sign. So he was looking at other projects. So.
Yeah. By the way, only because we talked about the bill of materials and the 4X on that, the signs were actually, towards the end, were going for like $300 or even like $150. So there's no profit margin there, especially when you have a high bill of materials because you didn't invest money in smaller, cheaper chips to do instead of, buying a $35 Pi. If you work with the right vendor to get a $3 chip in there that does only what you need, you're fine.
Sure. So just as a warning, though, he does say that if you have a sign from NYC Train Sign, you can totally try it out and see if it works for you. If you don't have an NYC Train Sign, definitely don't buy one.
I should build 2 on-the-air signs for us for the podcast.
There you go.
I'll make them connected. Mine goes on, yours goes on, and, hit a button on the Philips Hue tap switch or something.
You know what? I'm trying to do things with my Arduino. This sounds like a decent Arduino project, actually.
I would agree.
All I need is the light and a button. If I have to connect them, that's you.
I made a Pong game on an Arduino in my hardware class with an LED matrix.
You make me want to throw up. Okay.
Pong is an old video game. It's like the original video game for the younger folks.
Oh my gosh, that we have to explain Pong. Oh, Kevin, now I feel really old.
I played the original Pong in the early 70s on a Magnavox box, and now I feel really old, yes.
Wow. Okay.
That's when tech was exciting.
When tech was exciting, but now it's just demoralizing. Yeah, I'll be honest with everybody who listens to this show. I started the show, and Kevin and I do the show because well, we like hanging out together, but we also love technology. But it's becoming harder and harder to get excited about things that I feel are marginal utility, marginal benefits to people, and incredibly, what's the word I'm looking for?
Companies caring less about the customer value and more about what they can extract from it.
Yes. Oh, that's it. An extractive business model.
Look at that.
Look at you.
I'm reading your mind.
Oh, scary. It's pretty sleepy, so it's moving slow. Thank goodness there was someone coherent out there at CES or reading about CES, because Shannon Valor, I'm not sure, at MIT Technology Review felt really bad, and she asked herself why. She is the Baillie Gifford Professor of Ethics of Data and Artificial Intelligence at the University of Edinburgh and the director for the Center for Techno-Moral Futures in the Edinburgh Futures Institute. I would like her job.
Edinburgh, Scotland.
Edinburgh.
Are you going to learn me IoT? Aye.
Okay, never do your Scottish accent again. Oh my.
Look, I can't understand Scottish people, and it's on me, not them. So that's what I hear.
All right. Well, this article, we'll link to it, talks about basically what we've been feeling, but articulates it really coherently because they're a professor in moral ethics.
Yeah.
And it's this idea that they're not doing this for the consumer. They're doing it to take money away from people. And they're doing it for their own benefits. So they're basically putting in the bare minimum of utility that they think people will pay for. And this is what I've been feeling. And the downside of all this is, along with this lack of utility, is even if it's just extractive capitalism or subscriptions based on getting money out of me, some of it's based on using me as a product to get money out of other companies.
Mm-hmm.
And that's even worse.
Yeah, I walked away from CES probably the least excited that I ever have, and I've been going since 2005. And it's because of what you're describing and what's in this article. I saw so many, I don't even want to call them products, but I will, so many things, I guess, that were just like ideas that people put together to, throw out on the market, literally. Like things people don't need, things that are never going to sell. I mean, that you see that always at CES, but yeah.
And then business models forced into some sort of okay, NYC sign, what we were just talking about. I actually think that is indicative of like how we get excited about tech. Like way back in the IoT, I was like, yeah, let's take an API from a city service and funnel it to a sign or some sort of cool ambient intelligent device in the home to like help people manage their time better.
So they don't have to look at a watch or a phone or ask a digital assistant. It's just a different way to get information you need at the right place in the right time.
And, one of the issues there was they didn't think about costs, ongoing costs, or the bill of materials. And then they sold it for too little as part of this whole like VC network effects, like get all the people, grow really fast without thinking about the consequences and not thinking about it as a business. And I feel like I see things like, let's talk about the Withings U-Scan, which is the connected monitor for urine in toilets that was like probably the most talked about device from CES. This is a device that doesn't have medical utility yet. It is purely a consumer play at this moment. And it's an intrusive one. It's body surveillance that if you pee in this toilet, it's going to analyze your urine and send it to an app. And if it had medical utility, that'd be one thing, but they're selling it to perfectly normal people and they're not talking about privacy. And that is frustrating. And there were lots of devices like this at CES, and even useful devices have these business models. Let's look at Arlo cameras. Arlo cameras we talked about a couple weeks ago, getting rid of their 7-day kind of, you get 7 days of cloud storage for a lower price. People were really upset about losing that lower price. And Arlo's like, well, it's just too complicated to maintain. And it feels like a bait and switch, and sometimes it is.
And it's interesting because, I just, mentioned like some things I saw that just are terrible ideas and not in the consumer interest. And yet there is still some companies out there that are doing things right. And I know I told you about this and I sent you some pictures of this while we were walking around the floor, Stacey, but I saw a product at CES that my wife wants to buy the minute it comes out. And she is so not a smart home IoT person. Real quick, this is a Brazilian high-end cookware company called Tramontina, I believe.
Oh, they're the people behind the Tefal brand of induction appliances, by the way. Yeah, they're really well known for making, I'm not going to call it budget because it's well made.
Yeah.
It's just not as expensive as like Le Creuset.
Yes, right. Well, so this product, real quick, only because it is the complete opposite of what this article in our conversation is, is a smart induction burner. It's just a single burner. It's pretty thick. It's probably about 4 inches thick. It's rather large. I'd say roughly 18 inches square. It comes with a pan. If you've heard us talk about the June oven before, which is a smart oven that basically it just tells you what to do. You just tell it what you're cooking, or it can use a camera and see what you're cooking and says, I got the heat, I got the temperature, I got the time, don't worry, I got this, right? This is like that concept, but with an induction burner and pan, or pans, because you can have more pans. So looked interesting. I asked about the price. When it comes out this quarter, they haven't finalized price, but $299 to $349. Well, I immediately think, well, that's a pretty cheap price. So my next obvious question is, so there'll be a subscription for the thousands of recipes that you said are in the app. And they looked at me like I had three heads, and they're like, no, we want you people to cook and not worry about that. And I was like, I love it. I absolutely love it. And I'm like, there's a value add, not mining for data, not selling data. I mean, it's like I said, there's still hope.
Yeah. And just for reference, a budget induction burner with nothing still costs about $130 to $150. Mm-hmm. And they can range like all the way up to like $1,500 for a single burner. And these things are great. The reason I say that is because we're learning a lot more about the use of gas in homes and how unhealthy that is. And given natural gas and heating prices, this stops you from using that. Obviously, it won't replace your whole stove, but it is a cheaper way to bring induction cooking into your life. And I will say I have an induction cooktop, and I bought the Heston Q pans that were designed to work with the top.
Connected pans, yes.
Yeah, it was kind of glitchy. I'll just be real with you. It was real glitchy, and it was not my favorite. The Bluetooth always dropped off. Multiple people cook on a pan, so like but the pan only ties to one account. So
I think the smarts, because they take up some space, are better off not in the pan, but in the burner, which is where this is. It's also a scale. I mean, when you start thinking about where all those components go, it should be in the main larger piece of hardware, and a pan should be a pan, quite honestly, in my opinion. But having said that, there are products out there that we saw that are worth getting excited about. There just seem to be less of them these days.
Yeah. And, the GE Profile mixer, while still I think is too much, I do think like it'll come down in price if they decide it's worth doing. They can do some of that integration work and maybe eliminate some things that people aren't using. Much like June came out at $1,500 with their oven, and now it's like $500 or $600. I will say that, yes, there are things that we're excited about. But overall, I do feel that tech has become more exploitative than useful. And it's hard to see a way out. That's the other part of this article, is she talks about how she's kind of resigned to tech sucking. And that's not a good feeling.
No.
So, but yet we must talk about tech because that is what we do. See, this does keep me up at night, y'all. I would love to hear from our listeners and dedicated tech people, because this is hard.
We sort of have this conversation between us every 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, we really do. We're like, because we do. We love. There's so many good things that could happen here, and it just doesn't. Okay, and it's hard to see a way out. Okay, I think I've said that like 6 times.
Standards help. So let's talk about one.
Oh, what a segue! I love it. I know we're not supposed to draw attention to segues, but I don't care. All right. Yes, at CES, I spoke with the folks from the Connectivity Standards Alliance, and I just got a little update on Matter. I talked to them about how do y'all feel about Matter since it's come out and some people are experiencing some difficulties updating their stuff. And they were like, well, we're not going to talk about the implementation. We feel great about Matter. We think that, vendors are learning, blah, blah, blah. It was very boilerplate. The bottom line is they are happy. They've certified 550 Matter devices, and they have another 150 devices in the pipeline. They're also confirming that in the spring, they're going to do a release, I don't know when in the spring, of the certification. So a second release that's going to see added support for robot vacuums and home appliances. It's also going to have improvements in battery performance for Matter devices using Thread. So all of that is good news, especially for those of us who want to have our robot vacuums work over Matter. It doesn't include things that I'm excited, like that I hope to see soon or eventually, like energy management. I don't see anything about cameras, but cameras are a big pain, so that makes sense. So maybe we'll see those in the fall. Okay. Also, let's talk about some other Matter updates. Leviton. They make light switches.
Yep. The Leviton Decorus.
These light switches are everywhere in homes. They may not be the connected ones, but Leviton Decora is probably there. I see them everywhere. So they are going to launch Matter devices, and they're going to update their Decora Smart Wi-Fi 2nd Gen light switches to Matter in phases. So the first devices will receive Matter support in early 2023. That's going to be the Wi-Fi 2nd Gen model numbers, dimmers, and the switch. These are, I'll put a link.
So your standard D26 HD dimmer and D215S switch, of course.
And then more Wi-Fi devices are going to get updates to Matter. Now, the first gen Wi-Fi and HomeKit devices are not going to get an update. So, just so you know, if you are an Apple HomeKit user, you got to be in the home.
You got to make a choice.
And yeah.
Because you can stay on HomeKit and not enable the Matter bits, or you can upgrade the firmware to Matter and then goodbye HomeKit. It's going to all be through Matter.
Yes. So, yay. That's good, I think.
Yeah.
Because, now this does not include the Zigbee or Z-Wave or all these others. Now, if you're like controlling your Zigbee and Z-Wave stuff through like a SmartThings controller, then that's going to still act as a bridge. Like, because SmartThings has the Matter update. So that will act as a bridge to those devices, but they will not be directly controlled. That's what the Wi-Fi is for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Cool stuff that we saw. Aquara, which makes HomeKit stuff and other stuff. And I say stuff because they do a hub, they do sensors. They're like they're basically like a SmartThings that works with HomeKit.
Yeah, that's fair.
They'd probably hate that I say that, so I'm sorry. But they launched their presence sensor, FP2, lovely naming. And this is the first sensor to use millimeter wave radar to detect human presence.
Hey.
Yay! So this is another trend that I said we'd see is RF sensing goes big this year. And it's going to be awesome because no longer, like, a human being can be sitting completely still. And unlike with like a motion sensor, like a PIR motion sensor, the lights will not turn off if they're just still for 10 minutes. You no longer have to wave your hand when the lights go out. I know that's all happened to us in conference rooms.
Oh, yeah.
Because the RF is so sensitive, it can detect that you're there because it can detect that you're breathing, which is kind of creepy, I guess. But
I guess because of the implementation, the RF sensing implementation, this is not going to be battery powered. It's got to be plugged in.
Yeah.
That's okay.
But it's going to have multi-person detection. That's pretty cool. That means we can start getting more context. It's going to have fall detection and a built-in ambient light sensor. So it's going to be able to detect who is in your house without needing like a phone or some other Bluetooth device on them. Cool. And then they also have zone positioning. So like if you're in your bed, it can trigger something different than if you're sitting in your chair, which I think is pretty cool. Because like if you're in your chair, you're probably awake. But if you're in your bed, you're probably asleep. Or if someone else is in the bed.
I fall asleep in the chair all the time, but yes.
Yeah. Well, maybe you shouldn't.
No, you're right.
So this is going to arrive somewhere in the second quarter of 2023. I cannot wait to get my hands on it. And it's going to be $60. Oof. But for what it's doing, I mean, if you have one of these and the right system built up, one of these in every single one of your rooms in your house, which I know sounds crazy, you could actually build out a really powerful automation system. And that's kind of what I'm like, that's the dream right there.
Yep.
But is it Matter certified? Will it work with everything?
Actually, it is going to work with everything, but I don't know that it's going to be doing it over Matter because they're saying it's Wi-Fi based. It could, but
Aquara is supporting Matter in other devices.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. Also new at CES, Shelly. I've talked to them a bunch. They are a European company. Alterco Robotics is the name of the parent company. They launched 8 new smart home automation devices at CES. And I've used a couple of their outlets. They've got some very compelling outlet options. They have also created a smoke alarm that will have light and sound indication and will send a note to your smartphone if it's detecting smoke. And this is cool because we don't have a lot of smoke alarms out there. And they also can allow you through the Shelly app or through other integrations that they have to create like emergency scenes. Several power meters, power consumption efforts, and a Bluetooth button.
I knew you were going to call that out. I just knew it. Their first Bluetooth button.
Who doesn't love a Bluetooth button?
I don't know the answer to that question, but
I don't love Bluetooth buttons.
Oh.
Okay, they always require a hub. Like, because most of my automations, and because I never know where my phone is, if you have a Bluetooth button, it's only going to work from your phone, right? Your phone is providing the backhaul to everything else because Bluetooth can't always reach everywhere in your house. And that's why I don't like Bluetooth buttons, because I never know where my phone is, and I press the button and nothing happens, and I'm like, ah.
That's why I wear a smartwatch with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth.
Always be charging, Kevin. Always be charging. Okay. They're also going to have a Bluetooth door and window sensor that are going to be available later this year and an Android wall panel. And yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah. And I should say, so the Shelly Bluetooth button, they do have Shelly Bluetooth / Wi-Fi devices. So some of their outlets are Bluetooth Wi-Fi devices. So if you have the button in a room with one of their Bluetooth Wi-Fi devices, then your Bluetooth button will work because that's acting as a hub. Okay, let's talk about John Deere. This did not happen at CES. John Deere was at CES. They gave the keynote. They talked about smart agriculture. But the big news from John Deere actually came a little later in the weekend. And that was that they signed an agreement with the American Farm Bureau Federation to allow farmers to repair their own John Deere stuff. And the reason this is a big deal is because as John Deere added more software to their tractors and other equipment, which we cover a lot because I think it's actually really cool and very valuable. What they didn't do is they didn't make it easy for farmers who are used to repairing their stuff. They can't repair this stuff. And if they do, it breaks the warranty on their $1 million tractors, and farmers don't like that. The other problem is farmers would be like, okay, I'll use your stupid repair, except you're going to take a week to get back to me with my tractor, and a week is money when you're trying to harvest something. That is, your whole harvest could go wrong.
The authorized repair shops could be hundreds, maybe even 1,000 miles away, depending on where the farm is.
Yes. People were up in arms. They got Congress involved. They got the legislatures in several states involved. This is a big deal. And it's a big deal because it affects our food supply. So what happened is, this is not a law. This is just private sector commitments to making this work. And farmers can repair their own stuff, and they can get the stuff used to repair their tractors and harvesters and combines from John Deere, but they can't share it with everybody. They have to make sure the IP is protected.
That's the key, because it's really a closed system. It's John Deere's own in-house software making all these sensors and such work. So I can understand why John Deere might have held off on this type of agreement in the past for that reason. I don't think that's really the only reason they held off, but no, because obviously they can make money. Right. But they are basically saying, we're going to give farmers access to the tools, even the code to do certain things, but they have to keep it on the down low. It doesn't say anything about signing NDAs or anything, but maybe that'll happen. I don't know. Well,
and they'll get electronic, and the important thing is fair and reasonable terms. So this is a common phrase in licensing where you're saying, I will give this to you for quote unquote fair and reasonable terms. And it doesn't say what those fair and reasonable terms are. I'm sure we'll hear from farmers if it is truly fair and reasonable. The other thing to note is that this understanding between the American Farm Bureau Federation and John Deere is that if states or Congress pass a law, it becomes void. So we could actually get a law that is more stringent than this to help farmers out. So that might happen. Who knows?
But this is still a huge, big deal for them right now, as is, yes.
And this shows how important government oversight is when we start turning everything into software and technology, because the companies who make this stuff do have an incredible advantage and can have pretty punitive terms for their users. Again, this is the extractive, exploitative technology world. And if you've got that power over your customers, the only thing that says don't use it is competition or government regulation, and sometimes both. So there we go. Okay, let's talk about wireless power.
Let's.
All right. Another trend that I saw coming. I feel that these were cheap trends because they're already here.
But this was coming for 15 years or
but I
CES
said
I've
this
ever
was
been
2023 was going to be the
You
actual
did.
year because we had
You
all
did.
these FCC approvals.
to. Yep.
And you'll hear with our guest, there's actually another reason. So he'll talk about that too. But in news post CES, Energis, who we've talked to and talked about on the podcast, and Sato Holdings Corporation
In Tokyo.
in Tokyo, they've announced a partnership to bring the Energis 1 watt up power bridge for smart retail applications. And by the way, NRF is happening, the National Retail Federation trade show is happening this week. And electronic shelf labels and electronic sensors for inventory are the two biggest things happening. It's amazing. And we've talked about this on the show. I've written about it. The Bluetooth standard is actually working. They have a working group dedicated to this. It's a big deal. And what this is, you can tie this power bridge. It acts like a Wi-Fi access point, basically, and it transmits power over the air to these sensors. So these sensors now, in this case, it's Wiliot sensors, they're Bluetooth sensors. You have a sensor that can track inventory in real time without needing batteries at all or to be plugged in. It's great. And with the shelf labels, you're basically powering shelf labels that can change in real time and will never need a battery change or a person coming in changing out paper labels. Also, ASIA unveiled their next generation wireless power thing at CES. I popped by.
Well, a developer kit.
A developer kit, yes. Their standard is something they call COTA, and I can't remember what the COTA stands for right now, but I've had the ASIA CEO on the show. And this is not, again, for home. It's going to wirelessly power, again, chargers to charge other things. It sends more watts over the air. It's certified for 1 watt, but the transmitter could go and deliver 2 to 3 watts, and you can send it as far as you want.
It's still not as efficient as wired power.
No.
But for certain devices, it's like my smartwatch that I mentioned earlier. And it doesn't have a massive battery, and it doesn't need to charge in 5 minutes. So it's perfect for something like that.
Yeah, and ASIA actually partnered with a French company called Arcos. They're launching devices with the COTA chips inside. So if you have the gateway, the transmitter, you then can have the Archos devices. The first thing they're going to launch, I believe, is actually a camera, which is a little weird. Hold on.
They're an interesting company. They've chased trends in the consumer electronics market, tablets in the past, and just video players and MP3 players and all kinds of interesting things that kind of don't have a long shelf life because the technology changes so much.
Yeah, it's a smart home security camera, and it's going to leverage what they call the COTA Universal Base. And
it's probably a charging pad.
It is a charging
accepts
pad.
wireless power. You put the camera on tap, and it just never runs out of juice, assuming it doesn't record 7x24. Yeah, this would be great for sensors, maybe door window sensors if you can do that. There's lots of interesting applications of this.
yeah, and you actually tested one at CES, which was
You know what? This is another one of those things I was excited about, even though it probably doesn't sound exciting at first. Alfred has a new smart deadbolt. It's a door lock. It's their DB2S. It's DIY installable. And, okay, it's a smart lock. Who cares? We got plenty of those. But this one charges through infrared power transmission. That's $299. It will be available in early second quarter at Home Depot, Lowe's, and retailers where you typically find these things. You will need a WeCharge charging kit. Is it Y-Charge, WeCharge, WI?
I say Y-Charge, but
Okay. Why charge? Because it wouldn't run without a charge. That's why. I tested this because this smart lock was on display and was not wired, did not have batteries. It was being wirelessly charged. It opened and closed for me with just wireless power. And it was good because I'd said I Every year is going to be, quote unquote, the year of wireless power at CES. But this time it was, because there's actual products that are using it. And just to put this in perspective, Masonite was showing off their hardwired door with a Ring camera. I presume you could put in any other doorbell or video camera in there.
Not yet.
Not yet. But a hole in a door is a hole in a door. So,
but is it the right shaped hole?
True. In any case, to get power to that door all the time, hardwired, $6,500.
That's also the cost of a door. It's an expensive door, but a front door can cost like $2,000 to $4,000.
Which is why you buy a front door for life, and then you spend $299 for the Alfred door lock and a Y-Charge charging kit.
That's fair. I'm with you. It really depends on your front door. You can buy a front door for $500, I think. I'm like, how often do we price doors in this world? Not very often.
Not very often, no.
Yeah. $3,000 is a lot. Like, that feels like a high price for a door. I'm going to top it out at $3,000. So everything else is just power. Okay. So, yes, I am also excited about this. I'm basically excited if you think about getting rid of batteries, which is what our guest Sanjay Gupta is going to talk about, what that means for the environment, for convenience, for all kinds of things. It's going to be amazing. Maybe one day we'll get smart dust. Okay, that concludes the news segment of the show, but let's go to the part of the show where we hear from you. It's time for the Internet of Things podcast hotline, the segment of the show where you send us your questions and we give you answers. It is sponsored by Silicon Labs. Silicon Labs' Wi-Fi portfolio is designed specifically for the IoT, where multi-protocol, RF performance, ultra-low power consumption, and fast time to market are critical. Learn more about Silicon Labs' low-power Wi-Fi hardware, software, tools, and development kits at scilabs.com. Okay, you are the reason we can do the hotline, because we need you to ask us questions. So if you have them, call us at 512-623-7424. And you will be entered to win. Oh, this month's prize is the Nanoleaf Mini lights, because they're cute and fun and cheerful. So call us 512-623-7424 and ask us your questions. Let's get this week's voicemail. It is from Billy here in my neck of the woods. Let's hear it.
Hi, this is Billy from Seattle, Washington. I have a question about Matter, and specifically energy products. I am a very much aligned to the Etexity and CASA line of switches and plugs and smart plugs and smart outlets and things of that nature to control various electrical things that are not smart bulbs. I do actually have a bunch of Etexity smart bulbs as well as single smart bulbs. I am looking to know what my best option is if I want Matter support in my electrical home, in my smart electrical things. What can I do to ensure that I have Matter support? What products are generally the best or looking to be like they're going to have the best support for Matter if that is the route that I want to go? Thank you. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Hope you had a great holiday and enjoy CES.
As we both listened to this before the show, I'm thinking this is an smart energy management question.
I think so. I think we talk about, I spent all last year talking about it. It was another trend. I'm so sorry, you guys, that I wrote about. And we did see it with Schneider Electric at CES. They had a really awesome whole management system that if I had thousands of dollars and it were available in the market, I would buy.
Same here. Yep.
But it's a little too early for this. And Matter doesn't actually have anything right now today for energy management. Now, some of the Matter devices can tell you like how much energy things are consuming, but there's nothing to make it super easy right now. What I will tell you is electricity and its parent company, VSync, are not part of the CSA. So as of today, I don't expect any Matter stuff from them. I'm sure in a year or two, maybe that'll happen. But this is not, so it sounds like you're going to need new gear. TP-Link TP-Link makes CASA. They are launching Matter devices later this year. So if you wanted to get out ahead of, like early into this, I don't recommend that though, because we don't actually know how Matter's going to implement their energy monitoring stuff?
And until they do, what happens, and I can say this from using the Eve Smart Energy plug, which I did upgrade to Matter via firmware, I wasn't getting any energy information or consumption from that plug after I upgraded to Matter. Because, as Stacey just said, Matter doesn't really have it in the spec. Eventually, like a week and a half later, I got a software update from Eve where I regained the energy consumption data, but it's only in the Eve app, and I don't know if I can use that with other Matter devices yet, simply because I don't have a lot of Matter devices yet. So you're a little bit early on this because the spec is not ready, and there are probably going to be some changes depending on how this all gets implemented.
Yes. Now, if you're like, but no, I need it today. Schneider Electric does have their whole home energy management system. Again, actually, if you need it today, it's not for sale yet. But you could put their smart breaker box, you could put their EV charger, they have their Wiser Energy products, and those are already going to work within that system seamlessly. They also will provide APIs so other companies can integrate, but that relies on the company integrating with it. The other thing for energy management that you can do is if you have smart things and enough stuff on smart things, they have launched an AI energy management app service thing. I don't know what to call it. It's a service on smart things. And that, if you have Samsung appliances, it's going to try to start cutting energy use there. I don't know how well that's going to work. It obviously, this is, again, something that I'm eager to play with in my own home as these services roll out and more devices get updated to it. But I feel like this time next year is a better time to ask that question or make a plan. You can always ask the question. Sorry, I'm not yelling at you for asking the question, but you should make your plan for how you're going to implement something like this time next year. I know that's not fun.
That's a fair answer, though. Yeah.
But way to be on the cutting edge, Billy. Okay. If you have a question and we can tell you to just keep waiting, give us a call at 512-623-7424. And you will be entered to win the NanoLeaf mini lights. They're very cute. Okay. That concludes this part of this show. And normally, here's where I would say, hey, but please stay tuned for a message from our sponsor. We don't have a sponsor yet for this section, and I would like one. So if you are interested in sponsoring the Internet of Things podcast hotline, man, give Andrew a ring, or actually just shoot him an email at andrew@stacyoniot.com, because he would love to hear from you. And our audience would love to have you sponsor the show and learn all about the cool IoT things that you out there do. Okay. Now it is time for our guest, and this week's guest is Sanjay Gupta, who is the president of the Air Fuel Alliance. We're going to be talking about their new Air Fuel RF standard that was launched at CES. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and today's guest is Sanjay Gupta, who is president and chairman of the Air Fuel Alliance. Hello, Sanjay. How are you today?
I am doing excellent. Great to be here, Stacey.
I am super happy to have you. We are coming out of CES, and y'all had a big announcement, which actually is one of my trends for this coming year. So I feel super smart. Thank you. And y'all are launching Air Fuel RF, which is wireless charging at a distance. So can you tell me a little bit more about, we'll start with Air Fuel RF and what you launched.
Perfect. So maybe, Stacey, if you don't mind, why don't I start with just a quick introduction to Air Fuel Alliance itself, and then we talk about the standard. So Air Fuel Alliance is a global standards organization. All of our members are committed to what I like to say, true wireless power. Give people the freedom that they desire from wireless power, right? You know, the power cords are still the last cords left in our lives. All our members are committed to, let's get rid of them. So in that spirit, the Air Fuel RF standard that we just announced at CES last week is really designed to be able to power devices that need small amounts of power at a distance. And we're talking distance, let's say, of a couple of meters. So now you can imagine, let's say, a room with one of the Air Fuel RF transmitters, and it can power a whole bunch of IoT devices that you would find. It is actually a big deal, Stacy. You probably know better than me. We're selling tens of billions of IoT devices every year, right? This market is 5 to 10 times bigger than the number of smartphones that are being sold every year, right? So it's a massive, massive market. And, even though these IoT devices take small amounts of power, it is not zero. Most of these devices today have batteries in them that you have to go replace. First, find where these things are and then replace batteries. It's a painful process, right? What the air fuel RF technology allows you to do is to deliver power to these devices wirelessly. What this enables at the end is to eliminate the batteries out of these IoT sensors. Well, now imagine these IoT sensors without you having to go find replace batteries last. To just keep going on and on and on like the Energizer Bunny, right? As long as your electronics last, these IoT devices will keep providing and sending you data.
Yeah, never touching a sensor.
Exactly, right? We've talked about sensor dust and so on, but none of this is possible if you don't have this technology because batteries by far are the biggest component, volume wise in these devices of ours today. So it makes great financial sense to be able to do this, but I also, think about the impact to sustainability. Batteries have all of these toxic things that we all talk about in the industry today. And if you can start building these devices without batteries, just imagine how many batteries you're keeping out of the landfill eventually. I don't tell people do it for sustainability, do it for good if it makes good financial sense. And absolutely it does, but it has a huge impact on sustainability.
So, for people who are like, I'm sorry, what are you talking about? Let's explain how this works because it's offering just a few, is it sub 5 watts of power? Like, talk to me about how much power. I have to have a chip in each device. So, let's explain how this works and how this might look in a home.
No, absolutely. So I think the comparison that is often made is wireless power is like Wi-Fi. So imagine a wireless power transmitter, which is analogous to your wireless power access point or your router at home, and it's broadcasting power. This power can then be received by the IoT devices or the receivers. They have a small chip in them, which is designed to receive and harvest this energy and convert it to something that can be reused, maybe stored in a capacitor or provided to the electronics directly or charge a small rechargeable coin cell maybe also. So now the question is, how much power can you deliver this way? And I think the question should really be how much power can you deliver safely, right? This is really not necessarily a technical limitation. If you go to a lab, I'm sure we can show you, Stacy, tens of watts or maybe even higher amounts of watts of power being transferred from the transmitter and being received by devices. But when you look at the regulatory environment and what are the safety and regulatory requirements around the technology, what you can actually transfer is, depending on the frequency you use and so on, a few watts of power can be transferred. And that means is at a distance, now the power that you can receive will vary by distance because the farther you are, the less power we receive. So you will receive, I would say, a few milliwatts of power. Now, clearly, a few milliwatts of power is sufficient to power most of our IoT devices today. They are having a sensing component and they have some wireless communications protocol, which is very, very low power. Now, clearly, that's what this technology is designed for. This technology is not designed, hey, charge your smartphone in your pocket. No, we know how to do this, except it's not going to be safe. So I would not recommend anybody try doing this, at least at a commercial level, right? So yeah, so think about trickle charging or things that need small amounts of power. A very interesting application that you're probably going to hear a lot about are these e-ink smart labels, right, that you now see in retail stores. Now, the e-ink display technology is very interesting. You only need power to change what's on the display. To maintain what is there, it doesn't consume power. So you need very small amounts of power. If you want to change the pricing, you deliver it a small amount of power, it changes what's on the thing, and you can change it every few minutes in response to, let's say, a customer passing by.
Why is this happening today? I know that last year, I will tell you that my prediction was based on the FCC approving several over-the-air wireless power companies and approving their operation, but I don't know what else might be happening.
I would say a lot of stars have aligned in the last 12 months or so. The fundamentals of the technology to do wireless power transfer and even using RF waves, somewhere in the gigahertz, close to a 1 gigahertz and above range has always been there. We've known how the physics works. That has not been the issue. The issue, if you look at what has happened, is you mentioned the safety regulatory side. Whenever we have energy being transferred wirelessly, you always have to make sure it is being done safely, right? The amount of energy our cellular base stations can send, our phones can transfer when you're on a phone call, that is very highly regulated. The same regulations apply to wireless power. And now, as you said, we've seen a lot of products being approved in that space. The other thing that has happened is clearly to do it safely, you cannot send unlimited amounts of energy. We talked about you can transfer a few watts. When you receive it at a few meters, we're talking about a milliwatt or below. So the question always is, okay, so what devices are there that can actually benefit from a few milliwatts? And this is where I think there's been a lot of innovation in the last few years, which is the amount of energy for computing has gone down, right? So you can actually, even with a small, like less than a milliwatt, you can actually do a lot of computation. And more importantly, the low power communication technologies have improved. And our ability to make the level of integration for these communication and computing technologies has improved, that now you can have, let's say, an integrated BLE device, which integrates both computation and communication at very, very small, minuscule amounts of power. So I think it's both the wireless power technology improving and the communication and the computational industries improving, that their power consumption is coming down, where these two things are intersecting now. It wasn't just sufficient to deliver 10% of somebody's energy consumption, because who cares then? But now is when it has become feasible to say, you know what, wireless power can deliver all the power that you need for your use case. So don't need batteries anymore. Now that is really interesting.
Yeah, so that's where the companies like Atmosic, Wiliot, Everactive, all of those companies have been really pioneering super efficient radio and communication, or radio and computing.
Exactly.
I hadn't thought about that. Okay. Along those lines, let's talk about the members of the AirFuel Alliance and the ecosystem that y'all are trying to develop. So I know some of those companies are members. You've got some wireless power delivery companies. Can you talk to me about what a wireless power ecosystem needs to have?
The who's who of the consumer electronics industry globally participates in AirFuel, right? And to bring to market any technology in the wireless space, not just wireless power, right? You of course need technology providers. That is essential. But you need the OEMs, folks who are actually going to be integrating these technology into their products. So we have those members, companies like Samsung and Huawei and Xiaomi and so on. Those guys are participating. We have the semiconductor companies participating. You can look and say Atmosic, Energous, ST Microelectronics. These are all members who actually make integrated circuits that actually are essential to miniaturizing all of this technology so that it's fit for integration. You don't want these wireless power systems to be bigger than the IoT device in itself in terms of shape and size and volume. That isn't very attractive. Good for a demo, but okay, not tremendously useful. Then we have folks who actually do system integration and manufacturing. And so it's really not just like one or two people. We need everybody working together towards the same goal with the same mission to make it happen.
Excellent. And I know when people think about wireless power, they think about Qi, which has been the standard for a long time. And just this year at CES, we saw Apple get involved in doing MagSafe with Qi, which was a big deal. So talk to us, when I think wireless power, how this works or replaces something like an inductive standard?
Yeah, so and maybe it's actually very important to go back to why AirFuel was actually created. All our members are fully committed to enabling, as I was saying, true wireless power. True wireless power, wireless is supposed to untether you, give you the freedom. And today's wireless power technology that most of us are familiar with, let's say on our phones, is anything but. right? It doesn't really give you the spatial freedom now to maintain the level of performance, right? Which is still slower than what a wire can do, but you've lost your freedom. You're basically sticking something with a wire to the back of your phone. It is wireless, what I would say, maybe it's a little bit of the semantics. Yes, it is wireless. There's no like piece of copper or metal going from the transmitter to the receiver, but the distance is like maybe a couple of millimeters at best, right? Our members and a vision of wireless power transfer is a little bit different, which is we want to enable freedom so that I'm not tethered to a spot. Give me freedom to put my devices wherever I want to and charge them there. Charge multiple devices at the same time. With today's Qi standard, you cannot charge two phones from the same transmitter. How would you attach two of them to the same magnet? It just doesn't work. We want the ability to charge multiple devices simultaneously, and these devices may require different amounts of power. So it could be a laptop, a phone, a mouse, a keyboard, all powering simultaneously from one transmitter. Imagine, let's say, a desk that you have, and you have all of your electronics, and we all have a whole lot of them, all of them charging wirelessly from something underneath the desk that you can't even see, right? Same with the RF standard, which is, it's not for like one transmitter for one IoT sensor. If you have 10 IoT sensors, let's power all 10 of them from one transmitter. That's what wireless is about. So that's really what our vision is. And AirFuel has two different flavors of technology to suit the different use cases. We've talked a lot about the AirFuel RF, which is delivering, sub 1 watt of power to our IoT devices. But we also have another mature technology called AirFuel Resonant, which delivers up to 50 watts of power. And we're working on something that can even up that number to over 100 watts of power being delivered to devices at a distance, right? So like enabling desks, sometimes I like to call it maybe surface charging, so that you have a two-dimensional surface and you can charge any device that is on the surface or something that is, underneath, maybe your table, maybe your kitchen counter with glass or marble or granite or anything else, right? So very clean surface allows you all the spatial freedom. Hopefully that's enough of an overview on AirFuel and what we do and what's our vision of where the industry is going and where it's headed.
And along those lines, let's talk about timing. This obviously I said it was coming out this year. I know that there are partnerships in place to put wireless transmitters in retail settings already. So where are we in terms of I can go buy, I don't know if I'm going to buy like an access point for my home and it charges everything. I know we've got a chicken and egg, like you got to have the delivery mechanism and you have to have the receiving mechanisms in consumer electronics. So talk to me about how this is going to unfold.
Yeah, so I think you brought up something very interesting, right? This chicken and egg problem in wireless, right? And the question is, do transmitters come first or the devices with the receivers come first? And this is where standards come in. The only way to kind of get out of this chicken and egg endless loop is to have industry standards that both people who are making transmitters and people integrating receivers into devices buy into and agree. And we can create a multi-vendor environment so that you are not locked into a proprietary technology. So the standards now exist. You've seen Atmosic and Energous announce in joint partnership a development kit this week as well. So what that means is if you are interested in integrating this technology in your product, the hurdle to trialing this technology and getting your feet wet is very low. All what you have to do is probably send an email to one of those two companies. You can get a little development kit and start understanding and seeing how this technology works for you, your use case, and start integrating it. I think we should be seeing those electronic shelf labels that I was talking about. These are e-ink displays in the retail store shelves in the next 12 months or so, because the technology is ready. You could be at CES and see the technology in action. And it's a use case that is very meaningful to end customers. If I own a brick and mortar retail store, I can, today my paper pricing displays and promotional displays can only be changed maybe once every week. Imagine if you can change this dynamically every few minutes. Now that is how you compete with online. That's my prediction in a way.
All right. I shall look for physical tags in my stores to become more dynamic. All right. Well, Sanjay, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you. Great talking to you, Stacey.
And that concludes this week's episode of the Internet of Things podcast. Please join us next Thursday and don't forget to subscribe. And if you can't get enough IoT news, I would love for you to sign up at www.stacyoniot.com for our weekly IoT newsletter, where we explain all kinds of things that we don't even get to on the show. Once again, thank you for listening and please subscribe.